Hi, welcome back. So in this video, we're going to be creating our first repository. So I know you're probably thinking, well, when do I get to actually use Git? Can't I just go into a folder and start working with adding and committing files? Well, it's a little bit more complicated than that, because you can't just go through and start adding files and committing them just out of the blue. What you need to do is create a repository. So more specifically, a Git repository. So what you need to do is we are going to create a folder or a directory, then we're going to use a command to turn it into a Git repository. Once you turn it into a Git repository, it can then store all of the information and all of the different commits on that directory. So you can't just do it without using this command to initialize a Git repository. So from here on out, we're going to be doing it in a sequential order. So we're going to be following on from the last video, and we're going to be doing it, a lot of it in a practical way. We're not going to just cover theory and talk about how to do it. I'm going to actually show you how to do it. So I highly recommend you follow along and create with me, because I find that learning by doing is the best way to retain information. So just go ahead and follow along. You can obviously, mess around, experiment a little bit. That's the best way to learn, in my opinion. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder in projects, and I'm just going to call this my software, or my software. Yeah, I'm just going to call it that. So this would be me starting a brand new project. So let's just say I have a really good idea for some software or a web application. So now I created the directory for it. Okay, there we go. So now I want to initialize this repository. Now I'm going to show you what's going to happen if we try and run any Git commands in this folder. So first of all, let's go ahead and open our bash terminal. And now let's go ahead and move into our projects folder. So I'm going to go cd ... to go to the root. And I'm going to cd into mount. Then I'm going to cd into my C drive. Then I'm going to cd, first I'm going to actually list it. And I'm going to cd into users, list, cd into my user, cd into my desktop, then cd into my folders. And you see that I'm doing this quite fast, because over time you will get the hang of this and you will get used to it. So that's why I'm saying go ahead and play along with me. So now I'm going to cd into my projects, and there you go. Now I'm going to list everything, and now I have my software. So I'm just going to go and cd into my software right here. Now, what I want to do firstly is I'm actually going to copy this path because it's quite long. So I'm just going to copy that. Hold on. And I'm going to actually put it in a new notepad document so that I can, just refer to it later on when I want to change directories. So this is going to be a pretty good example of making our first commit. So I'm going to go and try and make a new text document, path for terminal. And of course, usually we call this by a lowercase name with dashes just to make it a lot easier to read with the terminal. So I'm going to open this, paste it, Control S or Command S, depending on where you are. I'm going to save that, and there you go. So now I want to commit this. So let's say I want to first add everything to the staging. So I created a brand new text file, so now I want to add it to the staging area. So I do git add. Of course, you don't need to know this command yet. Let's see what happens. Fatal, not a Git repository or any parent up to mount point /mnt. So what this is saying is this isn't a Git repository yet, so we can't really do anything. We can't work with any Git commands or store history or anything like that. So before you run any Git commands, there is one command that you need to use to initialize a Git repository. It's git and then init. And make sure you're in the correct path, because if you can't undo this. This is irreversible. So once you press enter here, this path will become a Git repository. So make sure you don't do this on your root folder. That would really be disastrous. Git init. Now it says initialized empty Git repository in the path here. So we can see here that it added a new folder. So it's .git, and what this is going to do is store all of the history and all of the commits for our directory. So this is what I was saying about repositories, is they store all of the history of the project. So you can see there, I have all of my branches, my hooks. We're going to talk about all of this later on. But now I can actually start using Git commands. So we're not going to make any commits yet, but now that we've set up our Git repository, we can move on and start messing around with adding commits, adding things to the staging area and all of that. So just make sure that you are in the correct path of your folder. And once you've done that, your challenge is to initialize an empty Git repository. So I'm just going to close that down. So that's pretty much it for creating an empty Git repository. It's very easy to do. It's one simple line, but you have to do this in order to make sure that you have a Git repository installed. It's already there and it's ready to be used. So that's the command you need to use. Go ahead and do that with as many folders as you want. I'd recommend you start with one for now so you can get a feel for it. And once you do that, you can go through and start messing around with all of your different projects, making them Git repositories, things like that. All right, let's move on.